Hey everyone, Leanne Bridges here and Dan Taylor. And if you're an entrepreneur, a visionary entrepreneur who are really looking at leveling up your leadership, maybe to improve your performance, have a greater impact, really want to do more with your skills and expertise, you got to listen to this video because we're going to talk about a revolutionary new way of leading. And we're really excited to talk to you about it today. And so hang on, we're going to chat away. So Dan, welcome. This is going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah, Lianne, this is great. We've known each other forever, literally since grade six. Uh, we
Exactly.
we our careers have crossed paths a little bit, and our friendships had a 45-ish year plus duration, which is awesome. I'm really excited about the new leadership revolution and the fact that you and I are taking our two different kind of corporate and other spiritual, which we both have,
Yes.
backgrounds, and really looking at what does leadership look like in the 21st century in 2024. So I'm really excited for us to help leaders become more effective using tools they haven't necessarily used before.
I love that. That's so well said. And it's for the 21st century. And maybe we can even just start with, what is a leader? We're focusing a lot on entrepreneurs because we do tend to have that entrepreneurial kind of way about ourselves. But a leader doesn't, and an entrepreneur leader may or may not have a large team. You may be like me. I don't have a large team, but I've been, in the leadership realm for a long time, trying to influence people. You'll find it even in corporations, people at low levels of organizations could be greater leaders than the ones at the top because they are some of the things that we're going to talk about. They're more organized, set up, aligned with what's needed for this time. A time where technology's going like crazy,
Crazy.
where there's so much change. The agility, resilience is absolutely critical. Engagement with people who have not, such low attention span, me included, because of all social media and everything. How do we get our employees or the people that are working with us engaged with us, prioritizing our work, all those kind of things that are just such big challenges for the people right now. But yeah,
It,
so
it's It's funny that you say, what's a leader? I'm going to go off the screen for half a moment, maybe have a quick chat. I'll be back in 10 seconds because I got a little show and tell that I think
okay.
is feeding into what a leader is. I'll be right
Oh, I
back.
love it. Great. That's good. Yeah, and I really do think that the definition of leadership is changing. People realizing it's not top down hierarchical. Whoever's got the most power anymore, right? I hope that
Yeah. So I'm
this
working
is
on a little project.
unscripted, so we're not sure what, I'm not sure what he's going to say. I'm
That's a
trying to help him.
surprise.
Yeah.
So I'm working on a little project where I'm trying to get somebody's attention, and I'm drawing attention to leadership and what leadership is. And so the attention grabber that I'm bringing is a Batman toy. And what Batman represents to me is self-appointed leadership. So no one has hired Batman to be the leader, unlike, say, the commissioner of Gotham City, right? And because Batman has decided that and there's other superheroes, so I'm also I'm also sensitive to being like male centric here, but so I'm going to choose Batman. But because he self-appointed himself and saw himself as a leader and took action, he got recognized by others as a leader because he took action. So I think what's fascinating
I love it.
is you talk about, you're a person of one, that's all you need. So anybody can be a leader. I suspect almost everybody is a leader in one way or another.
Yes. Yes.
I've been I've been a quasi leader where I chose because of the tasks and the job at hand that I became a leader much bigger than my role just because of the tasks at hand, etc. So I kind of self-appointed myself as a leader. I became recognized as a leader. So, my story in Prince Edward County, I was an economic development officer, and I started building best practices case studies, not academically, but out of practice. And then I got asked to talk about it in Europe, in Asia, Africa. It became not quite viral, in a big way, only because I had a job to do and I led the way and then I got recognized for it. So, it's kind of cool. So whether it's Batman or another, female or other superhero, I think this idea that we can self-appoint ourselves as leaders, and if we're putting it into action, we get recognized as a leader because we're doing great stuff.
Mhm. I love that, and, I really resonate with that, and both of us, because of our kinda unique style and not you and I are friends a lot, I think, because we don't usually go along the trodden path of everyone else, we do things differently, and, I'm very much the same. When I started my own business and then, like, 25 years ago, and then restarted my work, 14 years ago, just reinventing myself and trying to lead communities through service and trying to have a greater impact while still trying to, make a living and do work in the world and stuff like that. So that for me was leadership. And I find it really fascinating now to see the shift in the world that we're looking at influencers, people who are 18 or 16 and influencing
Self-appointed,
millions of people.
self-appointed.
Yes, self-appointed. That didn't really exist, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Who we're looking at as leaders are we have to really look at, are they conscious? What are they leading us towards? What is their vision? Are they self-aware? And same with ourselves, So who are we leading? What are we leading towards? And that's kind of the exciting part, is to think about what is your mission? Where do you want to go? And if you're an entrepreneur, what is it that you want to create? Not just the product, but the why, the deep why within. So these are some of the things we wanted to talk about on our conversation today. Did you wanna say something there, Dan?
Yeah, well, and one of the challenges with leadership. So, you and I are products of the 20th century. I just had lunch with somebody today, and this came up a little bit. And they talked about how baby boomers and Gen X and millennials and Gen Z all have different views on
Yeah,
leadership, etc.
yeah,
And we grew up in the hierarchical,
yeah.
excuse my
Hierarchical, yeah,
pronunciation. Yeah, yeah, easy for you to say. And really, where it was chain of command, almost more military like. Like I remember one of my first leadership, like official leadership roles, where I didn't understand that people didn't do what I asked them to do, told them to do, expected them to do, job description them to do, whatever you want to call it.
yeah, yeah,
I was shocked because my mantra was, if your boss asks you to do something or tells you or whatever, instructs you, you do it. Well, that does not exist today at all. And especially if you go further down the age chain, right? Millennials and Gen Z, forget about it. So we need new tools as leaders today so that when we set the stage for the task at hand and our leadership, what our not followers, but what are the people that we need to follow us as leaders actually do. So it's a I think I'm assuming you had the same experience as I, Lianne. We're the exact same age and the same grade and all that jazz. And corporate is when a boss told you to do something, you may have challenged it, but 80 or 90% of the time you did what you were told to do.
yeah. No, I think it's an excellent point, and I have to say, and I think this about you. I'm not sure if this is true, but I always struggled as an employee. Kind of be born between boomers and X, we're kind of right in that cusp there. I really struggled with following the rules. That's always been my challenge. And so I actually became an entrepreneur because I couldn't follow the rules. I really had
Yeah.
a hard time doing that. So I relate very much to the millennial generation and to Gen Z. And at the same time, recognize what you're saying is that they don't have models of how to lead without that hierarchy. There's not a lot of models yet. There's things emerging, but they can't look at the generation ahead of them and say, oh yeah, they taught us how to lead without the command and control. And that's just
Yeah.
emerging now. And even though we're of a different generation, we're excited about that. Whereas some people our age might be like, just, continue that old way. But you and I, because we're kind of that, break the mold type people, we've always wanted to do things a little bit differently. So it's cool to
We're,
share.
well, I don't know if it's our Montreal background, but rules were meant to be broken. That's all I know.
Exactly. Exactly.
Rules,
Yeah,
rules were meant to be broken. I laugh too because rules are man-made, right? So
exactly.
somebody decided to make them. They're not necessarily truths,
Yes.
if you, yeah.
Yeah, and
The
just as we're having this conversation, it's so cool because I'm recognizing the connection that we have, which is different, is that we really look at things at our age differently than a lot of people our age. We look at it like, how do we change things? How do we listen to millennials and Gen Z, and how they don't want to be hierarchical, and how, like, and bridge what were the good things of the old generation, and how do we bridge
uh,
those kind of things. And that's what comes to where we are right now, which is about merging the old way of doing things with new ways that are more in service and more around mastering yourself, your inner self, so that you can be the best person that shows up to the job at any level you are, because you are leading. Like you said before, we all are leaders in some way. We are at least very much a leader in our own homes, and if we're a parent or we're a partner, sometimes with a partner we lead, sometimes they lead, but in our lives with friends, family, community, work, we are leaders. And the more we can learn to be effective at it, the better we can manifest what we want: performance, prosperity, and so forth, right?
Absolutely. And I think I shared this story with you the other day. And I know there's a couple of topics we wanted to share with folks. So I'm going to jump into one if that makes
Yeah,
sense,
for
if this
sure.
is a good time. So one of the transformations that I've gone through is this idea of service leadership
Yeah.
and how liberating it can be versus the chain, the command and control version. So I kind of had a peak moment about a week or so ago where um, I was leading an organization and I very much was at the service of the team, meaning uh, there's a framework from which we're operating. There's some guiding principles, if you will. But my role, as I saw it, was to be of service to them. Do they need resources? Do they just need support, like moral support, like an ear, a bit of feedback, these kinds of things? And so, as a leader, um, when you've got a team of leaders, because that's essentially what I cultivated was um, giving them a lot more responsibility than they were used to because they weren't allowed before because of an older command and control methodology, giving them tools like kind of pre-approved budgets and therefore to make decisions for the business, etc. Anyway, long story short, I was in a team meeting and our team had doubled in size because we had some grant money. And the decision making process to identify the need for extra staff, the hiring, the recruitment, the onboarding was all done by the team with very little involvement from me as the top, if you will, leader. And it's not that I couldn't believe it. I was just like, my heart was so open and I'm going, wow, I'm here to help the team. And the team is doing a lot of the heavy, I do other heavy lifting, obviously, but they did a lot of the heavy lifting with very little involvement. And it all because I was of service. I'm doing a bit of training on leadership. And one of the things in an ideal world, as the leader of a company, you make yourself irrelevant,
Mhm.
meaning your team members are all the decision makers. And there's a bit of hierarchy there, to manage things, but there's sort of team leaders. and they run the company, and you only check in maybe quarterly, maybe once a month, and you do other things, vision, building other businesses, saving the world, going fishing, whatever it is that you want to do.
Client
So
contact, right? Big clients and losing
yeah,
all that kind of
exactly.
thing.
So, you and I have talked about this idea of going from frustrated to fabulous. And one of the things that we hear from leaders is they're all caught up in the business in the day to day. And because they were subject matter experts, they were experts of the craft. And now you've got a company, right, with 3 people, 10 people, 50 people, and and it can be a real burden on the leader unless you build the structure. So anyway, all I wanted to share was that one of my experiences when being of service is it allowed the team, without interference from a leader, to do what they needed to do because they had the confidence of the leader of the organization. They had the tools that they needed, and they were able to blossom, and they brought such tremendous growth with with absolute, unbelievably incredible minimal impact to allow me to focus and do other things.
I love it. That's amazing. And that idea of service leadership is something that we're going to explore in future, and we have some, information. If you listen to the end, we'll give you a free connection to an ebook that we have. And about that, what is service leadership? What are some of the components of it, and how do you actually start to put some of that in place? And I'll give you kind of my perspective of something just happened today. I had this conversation with kind of a mid to senior level person, and this person had a couple of levels below them and a couple of levels above them, and we're talking, coaching around leadership. And one of the biggest challenges that this person had was delegation, because it kind of comes to what you were saying about being in service. And when I asked them, do you find that people above you are able to delegate? No. How about the people below you? No. How about any in your whole history of your career? Have you seen anybody who's a really good example, basically, of what you're just saying, Dan? Delegating, empowering. And this person said, no, I haven't seen it. So this comes back to what we were saying before. There's not a lot of examples out there, or in the day to day of people working. They're working with a CEO, if they're not the CEO, that may be very micromanaging. They may be in a board of directors that may be micromanaging, whatever it might be. And so this is a whole new landscape in the service. You have to be able to learn to delegate. And even the feedback we're getting already on our ebook that just kind of launched is, what are some of the questions? I don't know how to delegate. I want to
Yeah,
hold on control because I know it'll be faster if I do it myself.
yeah, faster.
I'm
Yeah, in
the
the short term.
expert. They're not the all those kind of things that maybe we can talk in more detail now or at another time. And the part that I want to bring in is what I really love is the inner work that we need to do as a leader. That's what we call self leadership. So there's the combination of service leadership and self leadership. Self leadership is really managing our own thoughts, behaviors, reactions, in order to be of greatest service. And when we can monitor and work on and heal some of the wounds, some of the things that block us, then we become better leaders, and then we can become better delegators. We can become of greater service and be that service leader. So one of the things that Dan and I found is his passion for service leadership, my passion for self leadership, is really what we feel is not out there right now, but really needed. That marriage of the two is what we feel is really needed to help people to become those greater leaders for that, especially the new generation that's coming up, and for all the challenges that we're dealing with right now in our world and in business and as an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah, and I think delegation will be a whole chat. Let's save
Yeah,
that for another
yeah,
day.
yes,
The big one, and just to touch on it a bit more. So you're right. I think people are, whether they like it or not, are sort of one version or another of control freaks. Maybe not to the level of the freak part.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting. One of the leadership, I don't know if it's a mantra or not, that I've heard over and over again is, so if you can hire somebody that can do 60 to 70 to 80% of what you can do, you're way better off. So it's this idea, and so part of the delegation issue is trust, self trust. So back to your self leadership. Do I trust myself? Do I trust my team? And then who knows about all the
Yeah.
psychological issues that come along with that. But these are things that they need to be addressed, and it's all part of a process and going
Yeah.
through things. Um, I know we have so much time today, Lianne, that we wanted to talk. Is there more stuff you wanted to talk about, self leadership, that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, I think that just to write on that one point about what gets in the way, just to be really specific. I don't want to talk too much about delegation, but if you, or what you just said about, somebody having 70% of the skills or what, what comes in and where self-leadership plays, do I feel insecure that somebody's going to take my job, or that I'm not relevant, or I'm not showing myself well enough to the other people in the organization? What happens within me when there's a rising star within my group, or I delegate to, or whatever? What is it happening? And so when we can also work on that, because we can think, oh, it's a great idea, I'm going to delegate. And I can say I don't have much time or whatever. But really, are we afraid? Do we trust, or do we have that fear that that person's going to take our job? We're not going to be seen as worthy, whatever might be going on. And that's where the work on the self has to take place in conjunction with the service as well.
Absolutely, and again, another axiom, or sort of a well-known thought is, you actually want to hire people that are smarter than you,
Yeah.
and better, like smarter, better, more capable, and yeah, that takes a certain kind of mindset, heart set, and a lot of the folks in our target market really are owners of companies and leaders, and so ultimately the ultimate goal of a leader of a company is, and I mentioned this earlier, is to be able to step away from the business and have your team run it for you. And you check in more like a chairman of the board versus a CEO or a president. And so that it operates smoothly. It allows you to either think bigger about the business, where you're taking the business from here, like I said, fishing, camping, spiritual, going to Costa Rica for spiritual retreats, whatever it is. So, yeah, so I think that's amazing. Anything else we want to talk about before we wrap up, or do you think we've covered
I
everything
think we,
for
yeah, I
today?
think we've covered a lot. I really like what you said, is the idea of mindset and heart set working together. It's not one or the other. We have been very heavily on the mindset for the last many, many decades, and we bring in the heart set. It has to be, that kind of whole comprehensive way of looking at leadership and looking at individuals and realizing, as leaders, um, it's not just about the team and what they do and how we direct them. We're part of that team, and how we direct ourselves and lead by example is really key. And so we want to dig into some of these topics a little bit more about self leadership and service leadership, and how they work together, and how they're revolutionizing leadership in general. And just as and maybe you can talk about it a little bit more, but just as a kind of a gift for people, we do have a free ebook that talks about, the challenges and the revolution that's happening in leadership, and the principles of what we were talking about. So if anyone's interested, we'll put the link below in this video.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll put the link. I mean, you and I have put a lot of thought to, how do we help leaders go from being a craftsperson, if you will, or a technical expert, which is usually why they started the company, is because they were good at software development or engineering, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you've got 10 or 20 or 30 or 3 people, whatever the number is. And now you're not doing your craft anymore. B, you may or may not be trained in leadership. And, it's probably some form of chaos, whether it's organized chaos or
Yeah.
chaos. And this idea of going from frustrated to fabulous, we've set the tone, with kind of 12 steps and 4 or 5 chunks and topics to walk people through. And we're happy to do that. And yeah, I think other than the link, I think we've had a good chat today, and we'll come back in a week or so and we'll continue on some of our other topics.
That would be great. And if anyone has any questions or comments, they can put, and we can use that for future conversations as well.
Yeah, we'd love to actually hear what people's A, what's making you a great leader today? What's missing? What's frustrating you? What have you learned? You know, we'd love to learn more too, so that we can share good news with people. And but I think the real key, right, is how do you how do you a true leader really builds leaders.
Mhm.
That's really what a true leader does, right? They
I love
build leaders, and you know how can we help, and what can you do to really cultivate other leaders in your company? Where you know, what do they say, right? Two heads are better than one. So when you can have multiple people really leading up your company, it'll really up your game and improve your performance.
Beautiful. Thanks so much.
Right.
Take
Great
care.
to see you, Leanne, and
Good
everybody
to see you.
else.
Thanks so much. We'll be in touch again soon, huh?
Take care. Bye bye.